Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wicked Sports Podcast for March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. All of you fellow Irish Americans, primarily, I guess. I don't think they celebrate it as much in Ireland, ironically. But, if you're from Boston, stay safe out there. Try not to get too drunk today. But anyways, welcome to the show. We got a jam-packed show for you as always, starting off with some free agent signings. We'll start off, I guess, let's go with the Bengals. This is the big one of the day. The Cincinnati Bengals have managed to re-sign Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So, earlier in the offseason, Joe Burrow went on some podcasts before the Super Bowl and was kind of like really laying in to the Bengals front office, being like, I don't understand how these other teams can keep all of their superstars together and we can't. Feels like we should be able to manipulate the cap like these other teams. And, he was really like laying it out there for the Bengals, like re-sign T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Those are my guys. We've had so much offensive success together in the last few years, and it would be wrong to continue on without them. So what did T. Higgins and Jamar Chase do? Well, T. Higgins ended up getting the same agent as Jamar Higgins, hiring Rocky Say new. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I apologize, Rocky. But apparently what happened was he told the team, look, I represent both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins now. No Jamar Chase without T. Higgins. So the Bengals franchise tagged Jamar Chase to at least make it so they had the exclusive rights to negotiate with him, because there were some other teams this offseason. The Patriots were one that a lot of people said, hey, I feel like T. Higgins is going to get a big offer from the Patriots. And ultimately, the Bengals were like, well, we don't want to compete with that because we still have to pay Jamar Chase as well. So we'll kind of keep T. Higgins in limbo with the franchise tag and negotiate with both of them. So for Jamar Chase, it is a 4-year deal worth $161 million, and $112 million will be fully guaranteed. As for T. Higgins, it is also a 4-year deal worth $115 million, and the first 2 years are fully guaranteed for T. Higgins. So I think this is pretty fair. Jamar Chase, obviously the number one receiver in that dynamic there, deserves more per year. Was that $40 million per year? That's kind of crazy. That is quarterback money. Obviously, like, you don't often see a skill position player making quite that much money per year. But, it's a good contract, I guess, for Jamar Chase in terms of keeping everybody happy. There'll probably be significant cutbacks on the rest of the team. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow, let's take a look at his contract. So he signed a $275 million contract. So his cap hit this year, and that's over 5 years, is going to be $46 million, then 48 next year, and 52 the year after. Then they have a potential out, and then it's 53 and 57. So having like that much money invested in those two players is pretty crazy. But I mean, obviously the Bengals felt like the best thing to do is to keep their quarterback happy. And how do you keep a quarterback happy? You get their weapon. So they re-signed Mike Gesicki and now have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins coming back. Again, I don't know how you can kind of like build out the rest of this team now. Obviously, there are going to be some cutbacks, and I mean, people have already been beaming the hell out of the potential defense that this team is going to trot out there. But ultimately, today, at the very least, is not a day to worry about that. If you're a Bengals fan, I would imagine you are quite excited to keep the band together. If you are a Bengals fan, Let me know what your thoughts about all of this are in the comments. Moving back to the Miami Minute, where we cover my favorite team, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are actually making some interesting moves and some moves that I think people will be happy to see. So, first and foremost, earlier in the offseason, the Dolphins hired Craig Ackerman, the former special teams coordinator from the Tennessee Titans. And I actually wrote a blog post on dolphinstalk.com. You can check it out. If you're watching this on the website, you can check it out by clicking my name. It'll come up with all of them. It's like the second or third blog I wrote for the website called Are the Dolphins Taking Special Teams Seriously? And I wrote it that way. Obviously, one, because it's a little inflammatory. You want to like get people to click, right? But the other one is like, okay, why did Craig Ackerman get fired in the middle of the season? What game triggered it? Okay. And then I like looked at the game and everything that happened in it. And ultimately, they had two blocked punts. One was run back for a touchdown. The other, more devastatingly, got Ryan Stonehouse, the Titans punter at the time, injured. So he had a pretty devastating knee injury from that. Craig Ackerman gets fired. He's not on a team last year until the Dolphins sign him this year to try and improve their special teams unit. And then, very interestingly, they are able to sign Ryan Stonehouse. So for Ryan Stonehouse, he didn't come back as good as he was in 2023 before the knee injury. That's not that surprising. So I would have actually thought, like, if you had just asked me, like, do you think Ryan Stonehouse wants to play for the coach that was coaching when he got injured? I was like, probably not, right? But the Dolphins do sign Ryan Stonehouse, and Jake Bailey, his days are probably numbered. Here, he had his 2-year deal last year, and now he's more likely than not going to be the odd man out if, my interpretation was incorrect. And instead of there being any resentment, there's just like, I don't know, a friendship between the punter and special teams coordinator. I think for any walk of life, for any job that you're in, if a new manager gets hired and they hire their friend to be in your same position, you're probably not long for that job, and update your resume. So that's kind of feels like what's going to happen here. And if he can return to form, I think he will be a bit of an upgrade for the Dolphins, but a surprise nonetheless. Another move that they made, which perhaps isn't as much of a surprise, but is, good for the Dolphins, is that the signed cornerback Artie Burns. So Artie Burns was a first round pick. He was the 25th overall pick out of the University of Miami in 2016 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. With the Steelers, he played there for the first 4 years rather of his career, of course, 4 years. He ultimately, he didn't live up to the billing of a first round pick. So ultimately, in 2019, he declined his 5th-year option and he signed with the Chicago Bears. But, in the preseason, he tore his ACL 2020, and then he was on injured reserve all that year. And then he re-signed with the Bears in 2021. Didn't have a lot of action going there. So he signed with the Seahawks in 2022, and he's been mostly like a depth and practice squad guy his whole career with the Seahawks. So do I expect him to light it up to be like a star player for the Dolphins? No, I don't. I don't think he's going to be a starter on day one, but I do think that the Dolphins at this point could use whoever they can get in the secondary, just get bodies out there, see who's looking good, who can make plays, and like try to get us something. I mean, he's a veteran, so that helps, especially if the Dolphins do draft a cornerback, which is like kind of what I've seen a lot of people mock draft the Dolphins doing at 13. So interesting move, but I like it from the perspective that like the Dolphins just need to make some moves here, right? They just need to get some bodies both on the offensive line and in the secondary. So what are your thoughts about the signing of Artie Burns? Who are you hoping that the Dolphins draft, I guess, with their 13th pick? And are there any other signings you're looking for the Dolphins to make? A couple of interesting ones covered in this episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. So, story that I didn't get to cover at all last week because I didn't have an episode on Friday due to some scheduling things was Cooper Kupp. He finally signed somewhere. We didn't know what was going to happen with him, up until the Rams released him last week. It was like, okay, are they going to trade him somewhere? If so, where could he go? Maybe they'll keep him. Nope, they signed Devontae Adams. They're definitely not going to keep him. So, okay, Cooper Kupp's going to get traded. But if he doesn't get traded, he's going to get released. That's out there. Okay, well, if teams know that he's going to get released, who's actually going to sign him, right? So, as with a lot of times when a player is ultimately going to get released, he does, and he ends up signing with the Seattle Seahawks. So Cooper Kupp is obviously from Seattle. Well, from Washington, not Seattle, but Seattle is his hometown team. He, is a very talented player a few years ago when he was lighting the world on fire, both in the regular season and then winning a Super Bowl MVP. He hasn't quite come back to that level of play these last few years, but I do think it's an interesting move. So it's a 3-year and $45 million deal, so $15 million a year. It's actually a little higher than I thought he was going to get. I thought if the Rams are giving up on Cooper Kupp, then he's probably washed, right? And if he's washed, who's going to sign him? But the Seattle Seahawks are certainly in a position where they're kind of reinventing what they're doing on offense. So they traded Geno Smith to the Raiders. They traded DK Metcalf to the Steelers. And they signed Sam Darnold, who is coming off of what I believe should have been comeback player of the year. I know Joe Burrow came back from injury, but Sam Darnold came back from potentially not being a viable player in the league, let alone a starter. But, he's come in. Now he's with the Seahawks. He's going to be the man going forward. And to complement that, they've added Cooper Kupp to, potentially help this new look Seattle offense compete in the NFC West. And I'm sure getting released by the Rams sucked. And I'm sure that going to a division rival didn't suck. Getting the offer to play for a team that's going to play your former team 2 times a year had to be quite enticing for Cooper Kupp. And then the money is good, right? Like the money is, I think, higher than what many of us probably assumed Cooper Kupp was going to get from any team, unless it was a team like, I don't know, the Patriots, who had a ton of cap space and the need for a veteran wide receiver there. Ultimately, they would go on and sign Mac Hollins to try to fill out their roster. But I think you'd probably still prefer Kupp on the decline over Mac Hollins. No, I like Mac Hollins, and I'll always like him for catching that insane pass from Fitzpatrick against the Raiders, the Braille Mary one. But yeah, very interesting move for the Seahawks here. If you're a Seahawks fan, how do you feel about the signing? If you're a Rams fan, how do you feel about Kupp going to a division rival? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Wicked Good Sports Podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please subscribe. Check out our main channel. We do everything. We have video essays. And then we have our Fake Nerds channel, which is nerd and pop culture news. Kind of similar to this, but, that instead of sports. And then our podcasting channel, Better Radio. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.